Do you support sending military aid and support to Ukraine and other European nations? And do you believe the United States has a national interest in arming or defending Ukraine from Russia?
All right, so there are 2/3 questions in there, so let me answer each of them. The first question, should we send U.S. soldiers to defend Ukraine? Absolutely not. That would be a terrible decision, and if Joe Biden tries to go down that road, I will fight against it. Now, that being said, do we have a national interest in what happens in Ukraine? Yes. And let me step back, kind of like I did on the Israel question. Let me provide a little more detail, because this is an issue that's complicated, and there's a lot of substance here. So let's back up a little bit, and I will get to the very specifics of the second question, but I want to give some context first. So Vladimir Putin is a KGB thug. Absolutely. He has repeatedly said that he believes the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century is the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And his ambition is to reassemble the Soviet Union by force. He longs for the days of Soviet greatness. Putin has always wanted to invade Ukraine. And it's worth noting, he's done it before. In 2014, Putin invaded Ukraine. He invaded Crimea, which is a portion of Ukraine. But he stopped. He didn't go all the way into Ukraine. Why? Well, because Russia's principal export is oil and natural gas. That's where they get all the revenue. The natural gas goes on pipelines right through Ukraine to Europe. If he had invaded Ukraine, he risks that infrastructure being damaged or destroyed. And if those pipelines were destroyed, he can't get his gas to Europe. So he had to stop. So what did he do the next year? 2015, Putin began building what's called Nord Stream 2. What is Nord Stream 2? Nord Stream 2 is a natural gas pipeline built under the sea. And it goes from Russia directly to Germany. It skips Ukraine altogether. And the reason he built it is because once it's turned on, he can get his gas to Europe and he can invade Ukraine and not worry about the energy infrastructure he doesn't need it. So I saw that, thought it was disastrous, and I said, we can stop this. So in the summer of 2019, I authored sanctions legislation, very targeted sanctions legislation, surgically targeted, to the companies that were building the pipeline. I got bipartisan support for that sanctions legislation. It passed the House overwhelmingly. It passed the Senate overwhelmingly. President Trump signed it into law. Trump signed it into law, if I remember right, at 7 p.m. on a Thursday night. Putin stopped building the pipeline at 6:45 p.m. that Thursday night. Literally 15 minutes before my sanctions legislation was signed into law, he stopped building the pipeline. For over a year, the pipeline was dead. It was dormant. It was a hunk of metal at the bottom of the ocean. Joe Biden was inaugurated as president on January 20th, 2021. Biden began again building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline on January 24th, 2021, literally 4 days after Biden was sworn into office. Why? Because Biden telegraphed weakness and that he was going to waive the sanctions. This past summer, Biden formally waived the sanctions on Russia and Putin, allowing him to build Nord Stream 2. Now, in response to this, I told you before, I am leading the fight against every bad idea coming from these guys. In response to this, I put a hold on every single State Department nominee from the Biden administration. They were furious. They berated me. They planted stories in European mansions where the U.S. ambassador typically resides. These marble corridors are empty because Cruz is blocking it. And I'm like, you really think Texans are unhappy that some rich Democratic donor is not whining and dining in some mansion in Europe? Like, what? You never met a Texan, have you? But, look, these holds were designed for a purpose. I'm trying to get the policy changed. So you may have seen late December, right before Christmas. We're there till 1:30 in the morning, and I'm going back and forth at Chuck Schumer directly. He desperately wants to get some of these nominations through. I negotiate with him, ultimately lifted 32 of the holds to move some of their ambassadors through in exchange for locking in a vote on the Senate floor on Nord Stream 2 sanctions. We had that vote a week ago. The Democrats did not want the vote. The White House put so much political capital that Joe Biden came to the Capitol the day of the vote to meet directly with Democratic senators and ask them to vote against my sanctions. Mind you, every Democrat had voted against sanctions when Trump was president.
Yep.
So the only difference was they're for sanctioning Russia when there's a Republican, but if it's a Democrat, hey, we love Russia. We ended up having a vote. We won the vote, 55 to 44, so it was a big bipartisan majority, but get this, and you're going to laugh, the Democrats filibustered the bill. Literally on the same day they're giving speeches saying the filibuster is a relic from Jim Crow, the exact same day they filibustered a bill to protect Putin from sanctions. We got 6 Democrats to vote for the bill, including every Democrat on the ballot in November in a vulnerable state. And the reason right now there are Russian tanks on the border of Ukraine and over 100,000 troops on the border of Ukraine is because Biden surrendered to Putin on Nord Stream 2. Now, you ask, should we fight to defend Ukraine? Not with our soldiers, but we should immediately impose sanctions on Nord Stream 2, and we can still stop it today. The only thing blocking it is Biden's political surrender to Russia. And number 2, we ought to provide weapons to the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians want to fight. And if the Ukrainians want to defend themselves, I am perfectly happy helping ensure they have the military tools that if Putin invades, they can fight each other. I'm just not willing to send our sons and daughters to fight in that war.